Hey there everybody, my name is Snitch and welcome back to another episode of CO Select. I'd like to start this episode by giving a little shout out to a fellow content creator, Fidiscus Juscus. Close enough. He's a fairly new Advanced Wars by Web content creator. If you guys are looking for other creators to take a look at, I definitely recommend. I've been really enjoying his content over the last few days. He's putting out a ton of it, honestly. Maybe a little too much for some people's likings, but either way, he's got a ton of videos out. I'll put a link to his video or his YouTube channel in the description. If you guys are looking for more content, I definitely recommend giving him a look. I just wanted to give him a little shout out because I've been really enjoying his content and I hope that he continues making it, doing some great analysis. So today's game is a tier 4 match on the map Dragons in the Dark. I'm playing in CPU God. This is a Fog of War match. Man, this map is crazy. It's freaking huge. This is wild forest section all the way around the outside. It's a 3-base map, so with 2 bases captured, and there's also 2 airports, so quite high production map. There's also a lot of cities. Each player has 2 comm towers. One of the comm towers is kind of secluded in this big forest portion, which is pretty interesting because it kind of means that, and as you'll see, it's fairly easy to sneak units from, you know, capturing up here into this area and secretly sneak away one of your opponent's comm towers without them being able to get much information, without leaving units kind of in the area to scout, which is probably something I'd recommend, having played this map and now having a slightly better understanding of it. But yeah, today we're both playing Jake. This is a Jake mirror match. Jake's day to day, so he gets an additional 10% firepower bonus on planes. Sometimes fairly useful, but, you know, generally you don't want to attack from planes where possible, so not always super effective. His regular CO power gives him +1 range on indirects and increases this planes bonus to 30%. And his super CO power, which you should generally always save for, is +1 range on indirects, +2 movement on all land vehicles, and a 40% increase to his firepower bonus on planes, making it 150%, or 170 on this map, assuming that you have 2 comm towers. Pretty significant stuff. Yeah, so, I mean, this map's, you know, like I said, pretty interesting. Definitely got lots of different angles to attack from, and pretty heavy production with 3 bases and 2 airports. So as you can imagine, the armies can get pretty big pretty quickly. Another thing to maybe mention is that it's very easy to sneak units around in these forests around the side, and also it's very hard to hunt down units if they run into the forest. So it's always quite easy to just retreat units into the forest and use them for vision in the future. And that's a tactic I do incorporate in this game. So let's just get straight into it. CPU God's going first this game. Got your standard infantry build. Going into my turn. Start moving my initial first turn infantry up to the uncaptured base. More infantry being built. Very standard stuff. I start going for these close properties, you know, getting my back caps, moving towards this airport as well. Pretty standard for me. My opponent actually moves up for aggressive properties instead, so you see we have a bit of a playstyle difference here already. I don't think either one is necessarily correct, just different. Start capturing my uncaptured factory, moving up towards more cities. Build my first recon. This is still kind of the period of my life where I'm building my day 3 recon, because it just seems like the right thing to do. Nowadays, I don't do this quite as much, but it made sense at the time. I mean, day 3 recon isn't too bad, assuming that you do actually get value out of it, but you do have to get some infantry harassment to really, you know, for it to really be considered value. My opponent pushing up for a lot of aggressive properties here. Obviously in Fog of War, this is much easier to do and get away with, because your opponent will not be aware that you're actually, you know, going for these properties necessarily. So I won't be setting up, you know, ways to deal with this aggressive pushing. It's also why transports are generally quite effective. They actually match my day 3 recon, so we both have an aggressive recon in this game. Go for my properties, still prioritizing my back caps, just how I generally prefer to play. I actually put a day 4 recon, so I've got the double aggressive recon set up. I'm just crazy like that. My opponent obviously cannot afford that this turn without base skipping, because they have not been backcapping, so a little bit behind me on the initial income. I actually have more income for this turn, so I actually have a recon advantage on my opponent because of the way they move their infantry on the map, so that's something interesting. Start capturing my airport. Moving down my other units, getting these recons out. Not quite able to scout this city, unfortunately, so I don't see that my opponent is rushing it, but I do catch information with this recon. You know, move aggressively. Obviously, my opponent can't see this recon. You know, the infantry only have 2 vision range, so they don't know I have a recon on this city. But now I see that they've actually gone for aggressive capture, which does lead me to believe that they're quite behind on some of their push back here. Especially this neutral capture is very, very aggressive. So I can assume that they're a little bit behind on like the early income caps. So I know that this infantry probably doesn't have many reinforcements behind it just yet. They do finish capturing the properties though, so they are in time. Recon moves up, gets sight of my recon. My opponent moving up, now starting to get these back caps done. They do build their first tank. I have not got mine online yet, did not have the funding because of my day 4 recon. Finished capturing with more properties, so I'm at 3,000 ahead right now. My opponent isn't capturing any properties this turn, so that's going to maintain for at least 2 days. So that's a 6,000 advantage, I suppose. My opponent isn't getting. I start capturing my comm tower because, you know, I'm seeing the recon, I'm seeing these infantry. I expect fighting's going to start soon. I actually pull back to the forest. Don't really want to go for any aggressive attacks. I think I could have done, if I had used my information better, that this capture shouldn't be possible without skipping. So I should know that my opponent shouldn't really have any great way to counter hit except this recon. But I suppose I would have had to move this recon to the center as well to get like the counter attack. They would have got a first strike on me. I just generally choose to play more defensive without having more concrete info. Building more infantry and I get my first tank out as well. More standard caps going on, you know. My opponent starts capturing their comm tower as well. Tank moving up. They are ahead of me on the tank game a little bit. Their recon moves over here, scouting these left cities, much like mine's doing. You know, we can see that neither player is pushed into these areas. They do actually see my recon with the infantry. So I know that they know I have a recon in this area. So he should know... I guess... He should have seen this movement, I think. Yeah, based on the recon last time. So they should know that I have 2 recons and that this isn't the same one. So they should be aware of my production right now. Whether or not they make use of that info, who knows? Their infantry actually moves up to this property on the city. I believe it's, you know, obviously debate this tank hit, but I just see a solid first strike, and I'm also on a city, so even if they do have a tank counter attack, I guess it will force the tank to reveal itself, and, you know, I won't die, presumably. I also have this tank coming up, not quite in position off 1 turn, but, you know, close enough. I actually moved this recon out into the woods here, so my opponent should see this if they were watching. And I think, again, we played quite a lot of this game live, as is the tendency with Fog of War players. It seems they like to look at the game a lot, so I find that a lot of them, if we just play a lot of turns back and forth very quickly. So they should know I have a recon in these woods. I actually did it to scout this airport. And my plan is, I realized that if I could just leave this recon in the woods here somewhere, and I have so many tiles to choose from, I can get information on this airport the whole game. And obviously this is the closer airport, so this is primarily the one that most people will be building from, because they want to get to the fight faster. So this is a really good location, I feel, for me to scout and get information and help me make better, you know, confident, adaptive purchases when it comes to stuff like anti-air. So I actually built my first copter this turn and 3 infantry. I only had 14, so that's normally either like tank, RT, infantry, or, you know, copter, triple infantry if you want to keep up unit count. I just choose to go for the unit count option. So then you get a big first strike on my recon, put it down to 4 HP, but that's pretty fine. It also reveals where their tank is. Now I know the tank's position. I can assume they have a second tank, because I built a copter this turn, so we can assume that they built a tank as well, but... I think they captured the comm tower after, right? Yeah, so they could have got a bit more damage. Bit of a mistake from my opponent. Probably would have put me to 3 instead of 4. But overall, not that significant a mistake. Didn't miss a 2-hit KO or anything. That's the worst feeling, you know, when you miss a 2-hit because you didn't capture the comm tower. We've all been there. Put the infantry on the mountains. And moving the dudes up, they actually go RT, double infantry. So they're up to 12k as well now. But I am digging some more properties. I guess my opponent's also capturing as well. But they finally picked up on some of their earlier properties that they missed before. And also they're now kind of maybe getting a little bit of a lead because they are controlling some of the neutrals that I haven't managed to get to yet. I actually am getting trapped by this recon, but I do find it again. I move my copter down, making sure to keep it out of range of the recons. If my opponent just goes for a hit on this infantry, you know, try to play aggressive, I will have countermeasures available. I could also reach for my tank this turn. I'm not sure if I go for that attack. Moving up for my second comm tower, I'm a little bit ahead of my opponent in that regard. Starting to capture some of these neutral or these like center properties. I built another tank, built artillery, infantry. Like I said, this is the standard 14 build. It's a good one you can go for, as long as you're not like spamming artillery, but getting at least 1 out could be pretty effective. I'd like to move on to the comm tower, getting a bit closer. Put my recon back as well into the woods and surrounded it with the infantry. So my opponent goes for an attack on any of these, you know, I'll be ready to counterattack. They do go for the attack on this recon. They also move it aggressively, try to get more information, so they do end up seeing my copter. Kind of unfortunate, but happens, you know. I also moved my recon down here. I chose this tile because it's very unlikely that my opponent is ever going to put a unit in any of these 2 squares, right? Moving on the mountain makes sense, so I didn't want to go here. capturing the city makes sense. So I just chose to put the recon literally here, which is just this is a tile that my opponent should pretty much never interact with for like any reason. There's just no reason they'd ever put a unit here unless they suspect I have the recon in this position. So I figured this was a smart place to hide, kind of in the big woods, and prevent my opponent from getting any valuable information while I'm constantly getting info on their airport. Moving their artillery up, getting their tank reinforcement line together. They end up building an anti-air, a recon, and an infantry. Presumably they build a recon here because they assume this recon is going to go down, which I think makes sense. So I go for the copter first strike. Start capturing my second comm tower, moving my infantry forwards, finish off the one in the mountains, and start capping this property. End up getting trapped by the tank, but I do end up finding it, so that's something. Moving my artillery down. Moving my infantry in. Pretty standard stuff. Getting this other tank down, and I built an anti-air as well. Obviously, I can see this airport, but I just kind of think as if my opponent is playing the same as me, and if they were, they could have already had a cop trap by this point, so I already built an anti-air. Even though I didn't see one coming out of here, I didn't know that my opponent took both these airports on the same turn. So for all I know, they took this airport ages ago, and they have a copter coming out, you know. Maybe they, you know, skipped this city to get the airport first or something, and they already have a copter, like, threatening the center, you know. I'm just being reactive and covering my options, you know, just in case. So their recon moves into the woods. I do see this. Actually accidentally mirroring my position. But obviously I've directly seen where the recon is. My opponent did not see mine. They move their tank up, go for the interrupt, reveal that they have two tanks. Go for another first strike on my infantry. I could judge off this that they haven't got their comm tower yet. Because it's only an A4. I think it would be a bit more if they have two comm towers, but either way. On roads anyway. Artillery moves up, does reveal itself. I can't see this because of my infantry position. Anti-air is coming. Just moving their infantry up to the center. And they end up building their first battlecopter as well on the airport that I am scouting. So actually, I already have an anti-air, so I don't need to worry much about adaptation. But now I'm confident that my anti-air can get value. They also move up, pick off this infantry on the mountain. Oops, I think I... Oh no, what have I done? I hit the next turn button. Please forgive me. For I have sinned. Hit the mountain. There we go. I was one thing away anyway. What? Insane. Alright, anyways. Over the first strike of this infantry. Start capturing this property. Finish it off. Did I? I'm sure I did see this recon go here. Maybe I didn't see it. Okay, I should have seen this recon. But maybe I just forgot about it for now, or let go. Maybe they actually just have the same information on my airport the whole game, and I'm just actually an idiot. Which is kind of funny, because we both are just, like, doing the same thing, and neither of us have any idea. So I end up moving the recon into the center, building another copter into the center, building another battlecopter. I get first strikes on both of these tanks. It's a little bit risky, because I don't necessarily want to know what units my opponent has behind, but I did move the infantry into the mountains, and I see this anti-air, which is, like, -1 tank at least, right? And they also have an artillery, which again, you know, couldn't really be another tank. So I can be fairly confident that at most they could have one more tank in behind. And I have a copter already in position, and I see my opponent's copter here, and I can kind of assume this is like either the only one or the first one, and I have an anti-air covering all these units, so just take some solid first strikes on both tanks. Yeah, I guess we just both have a recon in the woods the whole game. How crazy is that? Well, there you go. If you're playing Dragons in the Dark, check that tile. That's the tile. My opponent moves up, gets some big hits on my recon, on my infantry here. I lose a dude. They start going for this aggressive capture without any vision as well, so I actually just end up seeing that they're going for it. They didn't know I had infantry in position to kind of like see them just start this, so... Yeah, moving their copter to the center. I know the copter should be here, because I assume it moves 6 to the left. They move their tank down, go for a hit. Actually, I end up going for a double strike on this tank, which does survive. I thought this was a little bit strange, because it's kind of like sacking a lot more health on their tanks, but... They do almost pick one off, I suppose. But now I have 8 and 1, which is, you know, 9 to 3 and 2, which is 5. I mean, I'd already kind of like, we were already like 8 and, I think it was 8 and 8, right? Or 8 and 7 to 5 and 4. So I already had a health advantage, but this is like an even, like, this is like basically throwing away tanks entirely. So I wasn't like super sure about these moves, but, you know. And I'm moving the recon further back into the woods. So yeah, I assume I just never find it, and we just both have the same recon, which is kind of funny. I'm not sure how much value my opponent got. I didn't feel like they had a recon here. Like, at least for me, there's definitely turns where I remember specifically having the recon here gave me a lot of valuable information, and you'll see those coming up, but I never felt like my opponent got any necessarily. So I move my copters here to pick up the tanks. The anti-air's around here, so Maybe a bit of a mistake. I also move my tank into the center, pick off this recon with my forestry recon. Probably should build another one. Get the interrupt on this infantry with a double strike. Moving my other infantry down, getting ready to capture these properties. Moving more infantry to the center. Got another tank coming to reinforce. Moving more infantry down. Put this tank into the woods just to scout a bit. He doesn't actually have any units over here right now to give him information on the copters. I guess that was the other thing, as I felt like there wasn't anything here. But obviously they can move units up next turn and maybe get info. But I don't think there's actually anything here directly other than this infantry, and they'd have to give up a capture to actually see these copters unless they sacrifice the recon position, which they might end up doing. So they actually use the artillery to interrupt my capture, go for an infantry hit on the recon. Recon's just moving up further into the woods. Really trying to get... Yeah, I guess I should have thought of this as well. I suppose if you get to, like, here, you actually can see both production facilities, which is pretty big. So, in fact, you could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, if you get to this tile, you could see all three. Both airports and this base. So that's pretty significant, actually. Probably should have been moving my recon, but I didn't think about it. I was kind of just content seeing this airport, but I suppose I could have definitely played greedier and got even more value. It just takes a while. And you don't, like, lose the information, so you definitely should be doing that. Really good place from my opponent. Definitely more aware of the map than I am. Artillery moves up. Like I said, no way to get information on my copters. The artillery, or the anti-air, sorry, does end up trapping itself, and it is within attack range of my tank. So pretty big mistake from my opponent there. Although they do have tanks in reserve ready to counter. They also attacked in the middle with their copter. Obviously, I already knew this was coming because of the recon, but maybe they didn't. You know, obviously they haven't seen my anti-air. I've kept it hidden, but I am actually in a perfect position to get a hit as well. So quite unfortunate for my opponent. They're going to be losing a lot of value here. We have matching artillery, so I end up killing the unit there. I go for the first strike on this anti-air, get a big hit. I move my anti-air down, get a one-shot on the copter. Moving my infantry down, getting 2 hits on this this infantry. Obviously, I know this tank is here because of my recon, but at the same time, I'm like, if they want to waste turns, you know, hitting here with the tank instead of reinforcing the center, I think I'm generally okay with that because I'm feeling pretty good about the center right now. Get a one-shot on this recon from planes with the copter. That was kind of funny, and I get a big hit on this this artillery. Maybe this is a little over-aggressive. I definitely could see my opponent building another anti-air once they realized this got trapped and it could be in danger. However, they went for a rockets last turn, which is kind of interesting. But either way, even if they did build another anti-air, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, even with super, they can't reinforce in one turn. It's still a 2-turn move. So I'm pretty confident to just get some big hits with my copters here, now that this first anti-air is pretty much useless. Moving more units back to the center. Got 2 tanks reinforcing. Got some infantry coming. And yeah, my opponent's actually a little bit ahead of the property game in this game. You know, I'm trying to contest their property here, but obviously they have infantry defending it. They got this big central property here, so they actually did benefit a lot from their early pushes, you could say. Even if they are struggling a bit on the fight, which could be... I think it's mainly because of just errors within the fight itself. But you could argue that I also got maybe more units online faster. I don't think they actually ended up being very relevant. So maybe my opponent did have the better capture phase in this game, honestly. Even if traditionally I would say the style I play is a bit more consistent, but maybe I just blundered a lot in the middle. I did give them a lot of free dudes, it happens. Look up the interrupt on my capture here. This recon finally gets in the position. I still didn't see it, man. It is risky pathing though. Like they did path through here, but if I'd had a unit maybe here or something, I maybe could have seen this movement, so... But either way, yeah, this is the space to be, you know? They see 3 production facilities, so just great movement from my opponent. They do end up moving on my comm tower. The anti-air sacks itself to get 3 damage on my copter. Artillery moves back to heal itself. They finish off my capturing infantry. Get another first strike on another infantry. This tank moves up, finishes off the 1 HP. Doesn't get a big hit, which kind of sucks, but it's because of the vision. I'm gonna again be getting this property next turn, so that's pretty nice. I also moved my tank here for an aggressive hit on the artillery, purely just to scout, honestly. It was 1 HP. I maybe could have backed it off to heal it, but I'd rather just use it to get some information before it goes down. So I can see if my opponent has any, like, big indirects or anything like that. They go for some hits on this copter with some infantry. Take some big damage in return. They're gonna get a one-shot, or get a kill on this unit. My opponent actually ended up using super this turn. which is something interesting, but I guess they didn't really have any vehicles in position. This rocket placement with Super actually goes one further, but still doesn't really hit anything. Is this my recon? I actually have a recon here as well. I guess I managed to sneak this in after the center brawl. I didn't remember that. I guess my opponent didn't see it either. They actually built 2 anti-air, because I do have like a couple of copters here. But they should know I don't have any more coming, because they have been scouting my base or my airports, so... Maybe a bit of a you know, like an over defense, building 2 anti-air when they know I only have this copter and a half. Maybe it's just a bit of an over-exaggeration isn't the right word, but an overreaction maybe to kind of the current conditions where once you have this information, you don't need to like be super terrified like this. Like, you know I only have these 2 copters because you've been scouting at least this airport the whole time. It's unlikely I built from this one. Unless I knew you had a recon here, in which case why didn't I kill it, right? So you should be confident that I don't have any more coming. So I think building 2 and not building another tank, it's a bit of a mistake on my opponent's end. I end up picking off this infantry, moving this infantry down. It actually evades the vision of this infantry, so my opponent doesn't actually know I have an infantry arranged in their comm tower right now. I start trying to capture their central properties, feeling pretty good about the fight, get a one-shot of this infantry, move up with the 5 HP copter, finish off the artillery, move back with my other copter, pick off an infantry, tank on the city, pick off an infantry, just getting a lot of free dudes, you know. Moving more tanks up to reinforce, move my artillery down a bit. Pretty solid position here, covering all my tanks, especially during a potential super turn, but I suppose this formation could be quite easy to break. It's just my opponent doesn't have much vision. I also do have this recon in a really solid position, actually. This is a really aggressive forest. It's giving me a lot of intel, so... Good stuff with my recons here. So I do end up moving away from the comm tower without kind of realizing that my opponent's in position to capture it as well. And yeah, this turn they do end up moving onto the comm tower. They activate super. Anti-air moves up, picks off this copter, but does reveal itself for only a 5 HP kill. End up picking off an infantry. Vision's a bit scuffed, but you know, it's fine. Moving the other units forwards, they get a big first strike and one-shot my anti-air, so that kind of hurts. But I know they don't have any air units, so I'm not like super fussed about it, but it does kind of suck, of course. Second anti-air is moving up. They do pick off my infantry that was on their city. Rockets move forward, don't get a big hit this time with the increased range, that always kind of sucks. But the big thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, I do see it, right? 1, 2... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nah, maybe I don't see it. I guess maybe I didn't see it. I was thinking maybe I just had vision of it and then my opponent killed the recon afterwards, but I don't think I did see it. And this is the big value of this recon. I've seen that my opponent builds a bomber as soon as they kill my anti-air. So I know that there's a bomber, and I'm able to instantly like plan ways to deal with it, and also track its movement as well, which I think is quite significant. So I activate my super. Go for the city capture. Go for the comm tower capture. On the left here, just gonna end up trading these corner comm towers, which I think is kind of funny. Get a big artillery hit, move my tanks forwards. I one-shot their anti-air almost, put it to 9. Moving more tanks forwards, finish off this infantry, get a big first strike on the tank. Could have gone from the planes, but it's actually in range of the bomber, which I knew where it was, right? So I didn't want to give him a free hit with the bomber, but I moved with the copter instead, because this anti has 1 HP. Obviously my opponent has a second one, but they moved it in kind of a weird way. I guess kind of scared of any aggressive pressure from here on the left. Jake's super is also really useful to kind of reinforce as well. It's really nice to get your tanks moving really far in one turn. Probably should have moved this infantry off and put it down, and then moved this fresh infantry on and started capturing this property, because then I would have actually had pressure. Yeah, this is definitely like backwards. I guess it accomplishes the same thing, but it just kind of wastes the 1 HP infantry, which could have been used to block this square. Get the double hit on this infantry, moving more infantry in, and moving some over here to deal with this comm tower situation. I build an anti-air ready to counter this copter, and I actually end up building it at the base where my opponent doesn't see. Not that I know that they can see anyway. And I end up building an infantry here, so it's probably pretty frustrating for my opponent. They actually have this recon in the wrong square. It should be 1 down, because then it would see this airport as well. So they actually end up don't even seeing that I'm building copters as well. So good movement to get here, but then they're actually ended up being in the wrong place. They do capture my comm tower, so this turn they have 130 plus. Here I'll see that I get hit by a big indirect, so I know there's a rockets here somewhere. I also get hit with a tank. They get another interrupt. See, if I'd had the 1 HP infantry here, this interrupt wouldn't be possible. So definitely a mistake where I joined them. I should have just moved this one off and then just started capturing with the fresh one. It's a mistake I've made in a couple of videos recently, I think. So I need to definitely work on fixing that one. The bomber ends up moving out. I see the angle it moves at, so I can kind of judge where it is and then, you know, assess its field of influence from that. You know, anti-air ends up picking off my 2 HP tank. This other infantry moves up. My infantry disappears like a ghost because it didn't actually exist. This anti-air ends up sacking itself. This infantry moves into the mountains, just getting vision, trying to scout. It's too low to do any interrupts, so I'm going to end up getting this property and this comm tower next turn. So finally I'm going to be ahead in the income game. Puts me to 21. My opponent should be at 19 as well, because they lost one here. Didn't end up getting to get this central city yet, but, you know, hopefully soon. I actually ended up putting all my units back here, because I know the bomber's here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, I end up just retreating a bit until my anti-air is a bit closer and I can actually cover. Pick off this infantry with the copter, which doesn't really look like it makes sense. So I don't know why I did that, because I know there's an anti-air right next to it. Maybe I just forgot. I don't know. Got my infantry up here ready to counter it. I do put the infantry in the city to attack. If my opponent for some reason decides to attack the copter, or attack the infantry with the bomber, I do have the anti-air in position. Maybe I was just trying to overload the anti-air at this point, kind of with enough copters that they had to make a weird choice. I guess they also don't have vision directly of this area. I've actually kind of taken out a lot of their units. My opponents don't actually have much information in this central area, because all these units are quite low vision. You know, rockets doesn't see very far, anti-air doesn't see very far. This tank has like some vision, but it's not actually seeing any of the copters right now, so it is kind of annoying, I suppose, but it's not impossible. They do an infantry on the mountains to see this one, so what do I do here? Build another anti-air, build a tank. End up base skipping. Oh no, I built a recon. Yeah, I built a new recon because my vision's kind of lacking. I'm definitely getting better at rebuilding recons where I can. Very important thing to do. My opponent ends up going for the kill on the weaker copter here. I'm pretty fine with that for sure. They end up trapping themselves in my reinforcing infantry, and in the worst spot as well, because instead of suddenly being hit, they would be hit by 2 infantry here. Now they're getting hit by 3 infantry, so I could probably start capturing the comm tower next turn as well. They move another anti-air up. Get a big hit on my infantry and on the comm. But I had this copter moving down. I kind of expected my opponent would be doing what I'm doing and getting ready to recapture it. So I moved this battle copter down, trying to actually contest this area with air pressure. Whereas my opponent's still moving units to the center, which is obviously fine. I mean, the center is obviously very contested here, but I'm actually also pressuring this comm tower side, trying to actually get a 3-to-1 comm tower advantage. Because I figured, you know, obviously being up 2 comm towers is very, very significant and can give me really good trades. So I get the double hit on the infantry here. I managed to take it out and then still have a full HP infantry. So in next turn, I will have a captured comm tower. Move my infantry up here to get vision on this copter, so I get a first strike. I also revealed the position of the bomber again, but obviously I already knew where it was. Just moving in aggressively this turn. Maybe it's a little bit overzealous, given that I know there's a rocket or somewhere down here, or an artillery, and my opponent has a bomber. But I have the anti-airs now to counter a bomber hit, so I end up just moving my army forwards, going for some aggressive property captures. End up getting trapped by this infantry. Oops. Every time, man. There we go. Move my anti-air forward. Still out of vision. Trying to bait the bomber into an attack as well. I really want to bait the bomber to hit me. And then on the next turn where I'll have 130 firepower, 140 on planes, I just want to one-shot the bomber. And it'd be a huge financial blow to my opponent. Because I know, I guess the thing is, the reason why I'm attacking as well is I know my opponent sacrificed a turn of production on units, stuff like tanks, to build this bomber. So I feel like if I take this bomber out, which I do have the potential to do next turn, it'll be a huge win for me. So that's really what I'm looking for. I go for the counter hit on this infantry and actually end up with a 4-3, which I think is kind of funny. And I move this copter down, keeping it out of vision, but close to the spot. Because I can't imagine my opponent will be bringing anti-air over here necessarily, especially when they don't know there's a copter in this area. I assume it's just infantry coming, but I do have an infantry reinforcing that my opponent does see, so maybe they will head to this direction with the anti-air. I did it again. I just keep hitting the wrong button. I'm very sorry. Let's see. And this turn, I actually ended up moving the recon onto the airport. I thought this was kind of funny. But yeah, I figured this would, especially because I'm attacking, I thought this prevents my opponent from building any reinforcements. and also is like really annoying because it's not actually in range of any of these production facilities. You know, if there was a tank here, it couldn't reach. If there's a copter here, it can't reach. I think a bomber could reach. 4, 5. No, even a bomber can't reach. So actually, none of these production facilities can reach it. So if my opponent wants to free this up, they actually have to pull a unit from the front lines as well. I thought this was quite a cheeky, small little play that was actually fairly significant. They do get the rocket sniper on my artillery. That kind of sucks. Anti-air takes out my copter. Second anti-air moves forwards. Does one-shot an infantry. They get the interrupt again on this capture. Coming from the weird angle. And they move up to attack this infantry. And then, actually a battlecopter here. Oh dear. No tower for you. They move aggressively to try and capture this property. Moving the copter to the center. And the bomber finally moves in to pick off a tank. And I'm like, oh, baby. It's kind of weird, honestly, because my opponent does see my anti-air at this point. So they know I'm in range to hit this bomber. So maybe they just felt pressured. But I think it's just a mistake, honestly, to move it in this soon. But yeah, they do end up getting some big hits. You know, finish off some units. Where are we at unit count-wise? So my opponent's at 22 and I'm at 24. I wasn't sure how much this was updating. A little bit behind in unit value, but that's mainly because they have a bomber. So I move up to try to capture this property. I assume my opponents don't have anything interrupted. If they do, they have to like pull units from the center again. I finish off this, I move this infantry up to hit this infantry, and then I move my copter onto the tower, which means that my opponent can suddenly not do anything, because infantry obviously can't take this, so now they need to get a copter or an anti-air over here, which is a big inconvenience. A 2-hit KO this infantry, cancelling the capture. I finished the comm tower, so this turn I'm 130% firepower at base. So yeah, now I'm just picking off my opponent's units with the counterattacks. Using this infantry to get vision. I guess recons on this map aren't as important because there are quite a lot of significant mountain ranges that, you know, as long as you have infantry in the area, you could just pop one up on the mountain like I did here, which gives you information. But yeah, I am definitely learning in Fog of War kind of the strength of recons with regards to actually fighting and pushing and how you do need one. And it has to be like the first unit to just storm in, and then you can make accurate judgment calls about how to approach your opponent's army, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I guess on this map where there's a lot of infantry and mountain ranges, it's not as important. Go for a hit of this copter, don't manage to finish it off, but I do one-shot the bomber, which is a massive win for me, you know, that's 14,000 value, you know, minusing the cost of the anti-air that I immediately get, so a huge loss for my opponent there, because it's a very significant purchase, and all I managed to take down was like a half HP tank, I think. I still have the recon as well on this airport, limiting my opponent's production to get units straight to the front line. I'm going to end up picking up this city next turn, hopefully. Going to get this city next turn as well, so I am starting to swing the economy in my favor. I'm also, yeah, 3 towers to 1, so my units are super strong firepower-wise. And my opponent does have super now, so they may have to go for a big super play. They actually do get the interrupt on this city, absolutely tragic. Go for another recon hit, or rocket hit from the woods. I do still know this indirect is here, I'm not really sure what it is, but I do know that I am kind of playing into it, which is not a great feeling, but, you know. My opponent pulls their units back into the fog, trying to just scout with info with these low HP units, pulling another copter up. Infantry move forward to try and finish off my tank. This anti-air moves up, gets a hit on the mountains, big hit on my infantry. More infantry moving up to this comm tower, but until the anti-air gets here, you know, this comm tower is totally uncontestable for my opponent. So my next turn, I do have supercharge. I end up just dropping my super, because I'm feeling pretty good about a push in here. And, you know, I think my opponent's on the back legs. This could be really dangerous in fog, because your opponent could always have additional units lingering behind. But I just felt very confident here. It's definitely, like I said, I'm still struggling with fog sometimes. I definitely have times where I feel really confident. You know, I go in for a big push, and then I get counter-pushed even harder, and I just end up losing. So it could definitely be dangerous to make these kind of calls. But I feel like I had a lot of info, you know, I get a one shot on this tank, and I have the 3 comm towers, so I'm just doing so much damage. I do a bunch of damage to this anti-air. I don't know how I saw that. I think maybe a movement hasn't happened yet. How do I see that anti-air? I don't know. Maybe I think maybe this infantry moved next to the forest. And I just hit both the units. I think that must have been what it is, and this infantry movement hasn't shown up, but I think I must have moved this infantry and it just didn't show up in the replay right now. Just moving up, picking off all these infantry. And then I find the rocket with aggressive tank movement. Yeah, I knew there was an indirect here, and I knew I just had to find it, so I just really aggressively move my tank forwards, and I find the rocket and get an 8 HP hit with an anti-air. So actually just massive damage. Start aggressively capturing these properties, you know. Boxing in the infantry here. moving my other infantry down, trying to pressure these properties on the right. This tank, yeah, I ended up moving to try and deal with the recon, and I saw it with this one, so I ended up getting a big 9 hit on this tank as well. Really just preventing my opponent, you know, locking this airport down with the recon consistently. I'm surprised my opponent didn't think about going for a similar thing, but... Did they actually move to a square that sees all the airports now? I guess they did, yeah. At some point they moved their recon to a better position. It was here, right? But they moved it back here, so now they see everything again. They did recognize that the thing was the wrong place. I'm leaving the infantry on this comm tower just in case there's an infantry sneaking around here trying to get a capture, but I should be able to trap it. At this point, my opponent just resigns. I ended up getting a big swing here. You know, you can see they're down to 50k value. So I guess my gut didn't end up being right in this case, and going for an aggressive push on this turn did put my opponent in a position where they felt like it was over. Maybe they could have made a comeback. I'm not really taking too many cities yet, but I do have infantry moving forwards. You know, I will be contesting these cities on the right. Not sure. I think the biggest loss for my opponent was kind of moving forwards with the bomber a little bit early. Maybe even building the bomber in general. You could argue is a bit of a mistake. But either way, you know, by the time that they attacked with the bomber, they got one hit off on a weakened tank and they instantly lost it to an empowered anti-air. So, yeah, I think that was the biggest mistake my opponent made. But overall, pretty interesting game on a pretty interesting map. You can see there's lots of cool quirks with the towers and the recons in the woods and just making use of these side woods in general, you know. You could sneak entire armies up through here realistically and go for complete surprise attacks. Although it would take a while, but there's definitely some cool aspects of this map that I really enjoy. I think there's some other like remix versions, like there's one called Wyverns in the Wilderness, and some other styles of maps in the same design as this, but overall it's a really cool idea, I think. Definitely a neat map. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of CO Select. I've been Snitch, thank you guys very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like, it really helps out the channel, and you can also subscribe for more content like this. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!